Dennis is here. Oh, there he is. Dennis. Dennis has been helping as long as I've been here. So this will be our 9th football season that we've spent on a sideline together. And I want to thank you, Dennis, for that. Dennis is a physical therapist at CPR here in Twin Falls. I'm supposed to be very clear to say he is not our athletic trainer, but he acts in that capacity, I always tell people. So, Dennis, I want to thank you personally for all that you've done over all these years. We've had our moments in those early years because Dennis's job is to tell me that a player cannot go back into the game, and that's not always real well received. But now that we have a much better understanding of concussions, those things change. So, Dennis?
Thanks, John. As everybody knows, concussions are very important to kids. The NFL has really stepped up, I guess, educating everybody because everybody usually tunes into football on Sundays. And through their example, we know that concussions are very important to not only adults but youth. And the state of Idaho has passed a law. It went into effect July 1st. And it's a concussion law that has some rules that protects our youth is basically what it's set up for. And one of the parts of the laws is this speech right now, which is an educational speech on concussions. Unfortunately, the state of Idaho and I think there's only like 13 states that haven't passed concussion laws right now, but they will eventually. But unfortunately, the state of Idaho has a concussion law because of, problems. There was a football player in Driggs, Idaho. His name is Court Breckenridge. He suffered multiple concussions throughout his football career. And he did not tell his father, who was a nurse. He did not tell the coaches. His friends and his teammates knew he was having concussions but did not tell the coaches. He would vomit after games. He would not remember games. And unfortunately, he was kind of the star player. So, they wanted him on the team. The community wanted him on the team. The coaches wanted him on the team. His father wanted him on the team. In a game, he went wide, threw a block on somebody. Not a big hit. It was very, ordinary football play. Unfortunately, his brain started swelling. He lost consciousness. They rushed him to Idaho Falls, and they had to remove skull for several days, let the swelling go down, put the skull back. He had 3 months of inpatient rehab, and he is back at home with his father, but he's not going to be the same Court that everybody knew. And that's why we have these laws. So we're protecting our youth. There's two things we know about kids. Their brains are not developed, especially male brains, which is pretty obvious. They don't develop and mature until about 20, 23 years of age. So sorry, moms and dads. It's going to be a long wait. But because of that, if a kid sustains concussions, it does more damage than if an adult sustains a concussion. If adult sustains a concussion, it'll actually go away 100%. So unfortunately with kids, we can have permanent damage if it's not treated right. If it's treated right, they're going to recover 100%. So there's a lot of big words when we talk about concussions. Basically, a concussion is a head injury. If you get dinged in the head, if you get knocked unconscious, those are various types of concussions. We do not look at concussions like we used to. We always thought that a kid would have to be knocked out for it to be called a concussion. Well, that's not the case anymore. If a person has loss of memory, if they have headaches, if they have blurred vision, if they have numbness, if they have various neurological presentation, that is a concussion, whether they were knocked unconscious or not. The coaches are now trained in signs and symptoms of concussions, so all the coaches have to take a class every 2 years, along with referees. So it's going to be very unlikely that a kid will sustain a concussion and not be fingered and pointed at, or huddled around and not being taken care of. Where, I mean, just 5 years ago, coaches were sending out kids that lost consciousness during a game. So we've made huge strides in observing what concussions are. Preventing concussions is very difficult because sports are traumatic. Some of the worst concussions are basketball concussions, because we don't wear helmets and the basketball court is extremely hard. Football concussions, we have these very nice helmets. Kids are getting stronger, kids are getting faster. So, equipment isn't always everything. Obviously it helps, but kids can still get concussions. We make sure that our football players are wearing equipment that fits correctly, it's aired up correctly, chin straps are fitting correctly, those kinds of things. Almost all the other sports, we don't have any headgear. So it's a huge disadvantage, let's say, to a volleyball player. As a parent, I want people to think about their kids using helmets, when they're doing other things that may include like motorcycle riding, bicycle riding, horseback riding, kinds of things that you can easily sustain a concussion or a head injury. Those are very preventable if you have helmets. If a player continues playing a sport and they have concussions, they can end up in a situation like Court did, where they have brain swelling. Something has to be done to relieve that swelling. Another very bad scenario is second impact syndrome. So if a kid has a concussion and they get hit again, it can actually lead to death. We have not had that in Idaho, but they've had that in Washington State recently. And then there's a big word, traumatic encephalopathy, that you're kind of reading about in the newspaper now with the NFL players, where they actually have changes in their brain that will never be normal again. And a lot of those aren't when they're adults. It's when they were athletes as adolescents. But repeated concussions are doing damage. All parents that have athletes, and athletes is not just football players, it's the golfers, the cheerleaders, the volleyball players, any sport here at Lighthouse. We want you to pick up a handout tonight, which is in the back, and if you could sign that you have picked up a handout, that would make John's job and Tammy Storm's job much easier to track. They do all the hard part of this work. But there's basically 3 handouts. The first one is a information sheet for parents. It's from the CDC, and it says parents up in the corner. On the very back of that, it's a handout for athletes. And this is the 4-step concussion plan, the 3rd and final page from the CDC, that talks about what you should do if somebody has a concussion. And this is something we've been doing at Lighthouse for a very long time, like John said. And fortunately, we have athletes that know the coaches. We have athletes that know adults, so they have an outlet to tell somebody if they're having symptoms. We know that the parents are very involved with the athletes here at Lighthouse. So we feel that, you know, if an athlete's having symptoms, there are avenues for that athlete to discuss with their friends, families, and peers. But anyhow, the four-step action plan is, obviously, if somebody has a concussion, they're going to be removed from play. They're going to be evaluated by a healthcare professional. If I'm at the game, I'm going to assess that they've had a concussion. If I'm not at the game, a nurse in the stands can help out. Anybody that has healthcare background and concussion training can fairly easily diagnose a concussion. At that point in time, the parents of the athletes will be notified. They will be given instructions on signs and symptoms. If the athlete does not improve, you know, we'll dial 911 and get ambulance service. Or if we feel they need to go to the hospital, they'll go to the hospital. And then at that point in time, you know, the athlete will be evaluated. Before they come back into any type of competitive sports, they must have a release from a healthcare professional. And that's the biggest change from the new Idaho law. And a healthcare professional is somebody who's trained in concussions. That person will use the impact test that the athletes have taken, like John talked about, which is a cognitive test. It's a very difficult test. It tests sequencing, it tests memory, it tests visual spatial skills. It's very in-depth, and you can ask your athletes about that test. But that's a tool that they can use to return the athlete back to play safely. Another thing we use is you know, some really simple sideline tests that we can do to safely return an athlete to play. But we have to have a signed signature, which may, you know, be scrutinized. I mean, if you have a neighbor that's a podiatrist and he signs your athlete off to return to play, we might kind of question that because they might not know what a concussion is. So we want a physician, nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, somebody that has the skills to return an athlete to play. We have protocols in our athletic handbook that, you know, are very, you know, detailed. Matt Kaiserman, who played for Boise State and had a career-ending concussion, has teamed up to provide these protocols for us. And if anybody wants to read up on him, he has done tremendous service for the state of Idaho and athletes. I need to open it up for discussion if anybody has any questions. That's another part of the parent meeting. So are there any questions out there? So if not, please pick up one of these at the athletic table. It's just 3 pages of handout, and sign the sheet. And I'll turn it back over to John. Thank you.